Good morning and welcome to the Earth's Final Warning radio podcast. I'm your host, Brian Delory, and I thank you all for tuning in to the program this morning at this late hour. I had originally scheduled this program to air at 8 p.m., but due to unforeseen circumstances, I had to postpone it until this time. This program, as you know, is going to be on the subject of spontaneous human combustion. Disregard the way I wrote the title for the program. I said human spontaneous combustion. I'm not dyslexic, and I'll change that just as soon as the program is over. But suffice it to say that there was very little to be found on the internet in the way of Christian teaching on this subject. It's been my belief for many years that spontaneous human combustion is the work of demons and devils. And unfortunately, there is just no references from the Bible upon which I can base my view or even, present a message of my view. But having said that, there are occasions in the Bible where it's obvious that demon spirits worked miracles. For example, in the book of Exodus, chapter 8, when Moses and Aaron were commanded by God to go down into Egypt and confront Pharaoh, Aaron would stretch out his rod and maybe produce frogs. And when he produced the frogs, the magicians did that also. And it's strange, however, that there were a few of those things that the magicians could not do, starting with not being able to produce lice. Aaron stretched forth his rod over the dust of the land, and it became lice. The magicians attempted to do that and were unable to do so, and they confessed that this is the finger of God. When I speak of magicians in this case, I'm not speaking of illusionists like David Copperfield or Penn and Teller or other such so-called magicians or illusionists. I'm talking about demon-possessed magicians who were working for Pharaoh. There was a similar situation in the book of Daniel, where we had some demon-possessed magicians and astrologers and soothsayers who attempted to explain to King Nebuchadnezzar the meaning of his statue, but they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. So while Satan does possess some power, it is restricted or limited. And so he is able to do some things. We know that during the tribulation period, that the false prophet will be able to call down fire from heaven. So the devil can work some miracles, but again, his power is limited and restricted. Now, I refer you to a case. You can Google search this. The man's name is Don Decker. And Don Decker's story aired on Unsolved Mysteries One Night several years ago, but it stuck in my mind because it was so extraordinary. Don Decker was a thief who was doing time in prison for a charge of theft, and his grandfather died, and so he was given a furlough to go home and attend his grandfather's funeral, which he did. Unknown to Don Decker's family, his grandfather had been abusing him sexually for years. So when Don got home and heard everyone speaking in such glowing terms about his grandfather, he became angry. And he, at one point, went upstairs into the bathroom, and he had a vision. and he saw an old man there, and the old man had a crown on his head, and he said he began to experience a severe pain in his arm. And then immediately after that, he went downstairs, and suddenly water began to come out of the walls, the ceiling, the floors. I mean, it was defying the law of gravity. At some point, some people began to get aggravated with Don, and some unseen force, which anyone in their right mind would know was satanic, picked Don up and threw him across the room. This is a story which was corroborated by several police officers when the family's landlord, when they came to the house, they saw the water. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's something that they personally witnessed, and so that makes Don's story very credible, in my opinion. And so eventually, a couple days after the funeral was over, Don was sent back to prison to finish his prison term. And when he was in the prison, a guard began to taunt him. I guess they had heard about what had happened when he was home on furlough, and this guard began to taunt him about doing that again. And all of a sudden, water began to pour out of Don Decker's shirt and all over the floor. And, of course, this was witnessed by the prison guard, and they became so concerned that they called in the prison chaplain, who, as I understand it, was a born-again Christian. And he at first began to accuse Don of fabricating this somehow, but then some other things happened there which convinced him that this was not something that a human being could produce on their own, that there had to be a supernatural aspect to it. And, of course, the prison chaplain believed it was the work of the demon, and he cast the demon out of Don, and Don was set free, and the water stopped flowing. As far as I know, Don Decker has never made any confession or profession, rather, of Christ, but he believes that the water incidents were produced by his late grandfather coming back from the dead to do that, to torment him. Be that as it may, there's definitely a connection between Don Decker's experience with this water appearing out of thin air, out of the walls, out of the ceilings, the floors, and defying the laws of gravity, and demon possession. I mean, anyone who has been interviewed on any television show, whether it's Sightings or Unsolved Mysteries, has expressed their opinion that this was the work of the devil. And then there was another program, which I cannot remember any names, but I did see it. It was on Unsolved Mysteries. And by the way, I should warn you that the Don Decker story you can find it in certain places online, but the video, the Unsolved Mysteries video, has since been removed for some unknown reason. Anyhow, this story I'm about to relate to you was on the opposite side of the coin. There was this family man and wife, as I recall, who, were just living life, and suddenly they began to have poltergeist phenomenon occur in their home. I mean, one morning, broad daylight, the coffee pot exploded. And another time, the man came into the kitchen. He was the husband. He was getting ready to leave for work, and as he was putting on his jacket, it caught on fire. So, now couple this with also the verse of Scripture in the book of Job, where Satan asked God to put forth his hand and touch all that Job has, and God says to Satan, he is in your power. And immediately thereafter, Satan uses the elements, basically a thunderstorm, to kill his animals, a tornado to kill his children. And at the same time as these things were going on, a group called the Sabians stole many of his animals. So he lost everything, but it demonstrates to us that Satan does have some power over the elements. And so it's no big surprise that his minions, his demons, have power over them also. And so when it comes to spontaneous human combustion, there's only been a few cases that have been documented as such. There are some articles on the internet that debate whether or not this is even a real phenomenon, that it may be something that is misdiagnosed or by the coroners, or something that's been fabricated. But most of the information that I got off of the internet about this subject believe that spontaneous human combustion has occurred, and a few people have been the victims of it. It dates back all the way to the 1800s, the first cases do, anyway. And so suffice it to say that while there's nothing in the way of Christian teaching on the subject, from what I've just shared with you, you can deduce that if Satan has power over the elements, fire and water, such as I've just shared with you from the stories and experiences of these people, then it's no big thing to believe that he could burn a person alive if he were given permission by God to do so. Now, this is my personal opinion, but these are the kinds of questions that people ask about. It's my obligation as a minister of the gospel to provide some type of answer. This is the best answer that I can offer. I think it's a valid answer. I don't think that there's anything else that makes as much sense as the answer I've just shared with you, that spontaneous human combustion is the work of demons. I mean, scientists are divided on the issue. They're not exactly certain of what occurs in the human body. Remember, the human body is 60 to 70% water. So for a human body just to explode into flames with no apparent source for ignition is definitely, and that, by the way, is the common thread through all these experiences. People just burst into flames, and only the surrounding areas are affected. The person, and of course maybe the chair they were sitting in, and maybe some of the floor above it, and a little bit of the ceiling above it, and that's all. But the rest of the house is unscathed, so to speak. So this is the common thread, and without an apparent source of ignition, it seems to me that there's something supernatural involved here. There's a supernatural element to the spontaneous human combustion experiences that people have had. There is one person who had a similar experience, which he survived. Now, I shared just a few days ago my testimony of being attacked by demons. Ignore that. That's someone trying to reach me who shouldn't be. And so I know all too well that things can happen, and even though people